Welcome in, everybody. It has been far too long, and for that, I cannot apologize enough. Thank you guys all for joining in today. Let me go ahead and give you guys my view. Welcome in. Thank you guys all for taking some time out, hopping in with me, Mr. Merca, the Bearded Truth, your neighborhood-friendly libertarian. It has been quite some time since we've been here chit-chatting and covering what's been going on in the news. But I wanted to really come back because right now we don't have, there really isn't any cohesiveness in this country at all, and I want to make sure that we are able to come together, understand what is exactly going on, and realize that no one in government has any clue as to what we are doing. So thank you guys all once again for joining in. If you guys are tuning in from Periscope, from YouTube, from Facebook, from Float, from Twitch, or if you guys are listening on the podcast, thank you guys all. Make sure you guys are hitting the notification bells, so hitting subscribe if this is your first time viewing. Make sure you guys are leaving a 5-star review, and I'm just going to keep it going. Give Spike the worst review you possibly can think of. Since I've been gone, big congrats to Spike Cohen for becoming the next vice presidential candidate for the Libertarian Party. It was exciting to watch him go through that and receive those incredible amount of endorsements, including the Radical Caucus, and just to see him grow and moving on with the Joe Jorgensen campaign, running for vice president. It's going to be fantastic to see that coming through. So if you guys have not been supporting that ticket, I would humbly request that you would support that, because what we're seeing right now from the Republicrats is that they have no clue what to do, and between COVID and between this George Floyd situation, they just don't care. And so I first want to start off with what happens to be my favorite, is that here we have President Trump speaking today about the good old George Floyd and how he should be feeling, because, well, George Floyd should be happy.
Equal justice under the law must mean that every American receives equal treatment in every encounter with law enforcement, regardless of race, color, gender, or creed. They have to receive fair treatment.
Haven't we heard this? Haven't we heard this for years? Haven't we heard this? Any time that some tragedy happens, we've heard this each and every time. But for some reason, it's different.
Law enforcement, they have to receive it. We all saw what happened last week. We can't let that happen. Hopefully George is looking down right now and saying there's a great thing that's happening for our country. There's a great day for him. It's a great day for...
It's a great day for him. It's a great day for George Floyd. The guy who was murdered. The guy who it took them 4 days to arrest the murderer, who there was plenty of eyewitnesses, cameras, and everything else there in the situation to ensure that we knew exactly who was at fault. We had, of course, plenty of witnesses there to know exactly how the exchange went. We had 3 accomplices from the police officers there, who... Some of them did recommend to turn over George Floyd when he was complaining for the 8 minutes and 53 seconds, I believe it was, that he couldn't breathe. So that they tried to give some pushback, but they weren't forceful enough. Not as forceful as having a knee be pushed down on someone's throat. So George Floyd, who went through that and was killed, who they didn't find a pulse after 5 minutes after they decided they were going to check, George Floyd would be happy today. He would be so ecstatic. He would be happy. Who wouldn't be happy to be murdered and then have to wait 4 days for your murderer to be arrested, and then another 3 days after that for the accomplices to be arrested, when it was all on tape that they were defending Chauvin, who was the murderer in this instance, protecting him by threatening those who were going to come and defend George Floyd. George Floyd should be happy.
Everybody. This is a great day for everybody. This is a great day in terms of equality. It's really what our Constitution requires, and it's what our country is all about.
Now, I want you to notice down here along the bottom, we're opening U.S. economy with a bang. Yes! Let's talk about the economic rates, because that's going to somehow make George Floyd be better. That's going to somehow return George Floyd to being a well-liked man. This is just absolute absurdity and stupidity at its finest. Whoever had President Trump, because clearly he was reading from a script, whoever decided to put that in the notes, they should be fired immediately. And while we're talking about people being fired, I do want to go over, many of us did see the situation when it came to the Buffalo police, what was it, yesterday maybe? So we had this young man right here getting pushed over by police. And you can see how much care that they had. This guy was going to care. No. You stop that, sir. No cares are allowed. So the Buffalo police pushed over a man who came up, and I believe he was handing something to one of the officers. Two of the officers that were there, that were in this altercation, if you will, they had made a report that, there was a scuffle and he tripped. Well, clearly we had video evidence proving otherwise, and as a result of that, what we saw was completely different. Obviously, they pushed this man over. He fell over. Blood immediately coming from the back of his head where he cracked his skull. And as a result of this, those two officers were put on administrative leave, which is the right answer, and should be potentially facing some crimes. But beyond that, 57 of those within the Buffalo Police Department emergency response team, the rest of the entire emergency response team goes, that's not fair, that's not okay, so they resigned. And I must say, good riddance to you 57 people, because if you think that it's okay for you to push over a man who's coming up, one singular man against a wall of people, that you could push him over, and that's justified, that is good American justice right there. If you think that, good riddance. Go ahead. They should be fired. They're only resigned from the emergency response team, so they are still fully funded by the American taxpayers, and however else that police department is being funded, probably through civil asset forfeiture. Let's blame it. New York is not exactly great when it comes to the criminal aspect or the criminal justice system, but nonetheless, what we have here is just despicable situation all around. So good riddance to those 57 officers. And this was, of course, to show support for the officers who are suspended without pay. 75 years old is how old that man was. 75 years old. So, good riddance to those guys. So glad to see them going away. But still, George Floyd, he should be happy for this situation. Don't you guys forget that. George Floyd, so happy, so glad you're just looking down, after being murdered. You're just so happy to see all of this going on. It's okay. It's okay. Yes, Matt, I can put you guys can have whatever comments you want, and they will appear on the screen. Absolutely. This is for you guys. I want you guys to be feeling special. You got to talk and produce your own show. My God, yes. I'm not quite as good as Spike Cohen, but we are working on the production quality, if you will. Replying too difficult for no reason. He is very talented that way. I wouldn't call it talented. It just comes with it. Jason's beard is very George Michael circa 1987. Oh, I appreciate it, Matt. At least it does not look like a prepubescent boy, or a mildly pubescent. Somebody going through puberty, if you will. But I gotta go to the next fantastic news, because do you know, whenever I speak of civil rights, do you know the country that I think of first? I'm like, this is the epitome of somebody who stands strong for the ideas of free speech, of a free press, of the ideas that, people are able to criticize their government and talk about things and be a resistance to those in power, and, the ability just to be private in everything that they're doing. It's Russia. It's always Russia. Russia urges the United States to observe democratic standards and respect Americans' rights to protest. Oh man, the Russian Foreign Ministry urged the U.S. authorities to respect Americans' right for peaceful protest and the wave of demonstrations sparked by George Floyd's death. I don't know how you guys feel about this, but just seeing this makes me the most joy-filled person in the world. Because Russia, who has literally incarcerated journalists for years, I mean, you really have to be careful with what you say in Russia historically. They're coming out and they're like, whoa, America, you guys, let's tune this back a little bit. You guys are going on a little strong. Let's slow down. Let's give a little compassion here. Let's freedom ring for a little bit. So Russia is stepping in and is criticizing. So it's time for the U.S. to drop the mentor's tone and look in the mirror, and to start respecting people's rights and observing democratic standards at home. This is truly the epitome of I don't even know how to describe the amount of beautifulness that is this discussion. I cannot believe that this is true news right now. Russia is calling for America to care about people. Anyways, I did want to touch on another topic. A lot of people, I want to go dive deeper into the George Floyd situation. I think that it's important that we do discuss this at great length, because the narrative has constantly been changed, because you have the Republicrats and they're pushing for their Republicrat talking points, and the issues are not being resolved. They're not being cared about, and they're not even being administered in any way. So when we look at this situation, like I said, we had a team of 4 police officers killing a man in broad daylight, being recorded and being put on notice. They were fired the next day. Took 4 days for the first murderer, or for the main murderer, to be arrested. 7 days total for the accomplices to be murdered. In between the time of when George Floyd was killed and the time in which Chauvin was arrested, there was a shopkeeper, I believe in Minneapolis, that rioters and looters were breaking into his store. He shot one of them in defense, was arrested, and was brought into jail and brought up on charges before Chauvin was. This is an important distinction, because we have always had a 2-tiered system here in America. Well, not always, in the last 50 years. So created by the Supreme Court was this idea of qualified immunity. Qualified immunity basically means that because you're law enforcement, or because you're a government entity, you get afforded more protections. And what it really stands out to me is the old Animal Farm adage, one of my favorite quotes from Animal Farm, is that all animals are equal, but some animals are more equal than others. Because, you know what, we all have to abide by the same law. We shouldn't murder people, and we shouldn't do bad things. But you know, maybe your role is just a little more important than us. So you gotta walk around a free man. You're a murderer. We know it. Everyone knows it. Everyone saw it. It's okay. But you get to be free because you're a police officer. It just seems unruly. I really do think that if these protests weren't happening, if the riots didn't happen, if the looting didn't happen, and certainly I denounce the looting and the rioting, we shouldn't be attacking private businesses. We shouldn't be threatening people. Anger and angst and unruliness should be pointed towards those who have actually created this issue, being government and police departments. But if those weren't happening, if the people did not step up and shout down police officers, shout down the police chiefs, and really make their stances known and shown that we are willing to stand up, I don't think that Chauvin and company would have been arrested. I genuinely don't think that it would have. I think if the video recording wasn't there, it would have been just another normal day. Another man gets killed, another unarmed black man gets killed, and everyone just moves on with it. So thank you to everyone out there who, when you see something, you say something by taking a recording of it, posting it online, live streaming it, doing your civic duty by being able to hold police officers and government officials accountable. Thank you to everyone who was a part of that. We got to keep doing this though. And a part of this accountability really does get back to that qualified immunity. So what we're seeing right now is Thankfully, the first libertarian member of Congress who wasn't elected as a libertarian was elected as a Republican, turned into an independent, then decided he was going to run for president of the United States under a libertarian banner, or at least create an exploratory committee, then decided, hey, not for me, I'll just be a lifelong libertarian. Justin Amash and Progressive Representative Ayanna Pressley from Massachusetts have joined forces in order to introduce a bill in the House of Representatives that would eliminate the controversial doctrine of qualified immunity for police officers. I think that this is the right answer. I think that one of the issues that we're going to face is that even though this is the right process, right, because Supreme Court, for whatever reason, can rule from the bench and create legislation as they've done in previous times, and certainly with this, is that we're going to have to get this pushed through. We're going to have to get, the Republicans in the Senate. We're going to have to get the Democrats in the House, and I think there's going to be a lot less resistance there in the House, but we're going to have to get this through, and we're going to have to get the support to garner that support. It's going to be a hard push. Do I see it passing? I don't see it passing with the current Congress, but we need to really push on this. So I would encourage each and every one of you, if you guys haven't already, get out there, learn about qualified immunity, learn what it is, get educated on it, fight against it. Let's be the good activists that we are. I mean, it's important that we know this stuff, but it's also important that we go out and we share this. So it's important that we hold people accountable. And one of the ways that we can do that, of course, is by removing qualified immunity. And so thank you to those individuals for putting up legislation in order to fight against this. We need a good political backing. We need to raise the awareness on this, get people on both sides, get the Republicans and get the Libertarians out there to push and endorse this. Make sure that members of the House and members of the Senate are aware of what's coming down the pipeline, and make sure that they know that you are in support of them. Feel free, if you guys have never done that before, feel free to reach out to me. I would love to help you support with that. Trying to be as easily accessible as possible. As you guys can tell, I've been really engaged on the activist side as of late, and so feel free to reach out in that way. But here's so there's good things that you can do, right? You can hold people more accountable. And I think that once you have that accountability there, whether it's through the removal of qualified immunity or whether it's through changing up the way their pension plan is, right? Make the pension be take hits whenever your police department or your police agency has created civil rights violations, that that takes a hit for everyone on the team. And then now the good apples, if you will, are going to be forced to say, either I'm going to get hurt in the long run, or I'm going to have to straighten this guy out or get him removed. I think that we need to find a way to encourage officers to hold each other accountable, rather than seeing 57 of the emergency response team quit because 2 people are being accountable. So we got to find a way to flip that on its head, get that movement going. But between those two, this is all about holding people accountable for their actions. No one is against, right? There's no libertarian out there that's like, let's not hold people accountable for their actions. Let's hold people accountable when you have violated the rights of another, when you have aggressed upon another, and you're the aggressor, right? There's no one here that's saying let's not do that. Proportionality, of course, is important, because some 75-year-old man is standing in front of you doesn't mean you push him over and then you just kind of let his cracked skull just lay there and bleed out. So I realize I'm flying through a lot of this stuff. I apologize, but that's on the accountability front. Now, what is there possibly anywhere out there that just goes completely way out of left field and decides that instead of holding people accountable, we're just going to invest? Of course, in the LA, in the Los Angeles areas, they cut the police budgets to spend more on communities of color. The mayor of Los Angeles has responded to the George Floyd protest and is planning to cut $100 to $150 million from the city's police budget to reinvest more dollars into the Black community. While reparations would be great, you're not even addressing the issue. So if we're not going to... is there any chance, if it passes the House and the Senate, that Trump signs it? I'm not certain. Trump has been kind of the best on criminal justice reform in the last, as for the last couple presidents. But I would rather put that in front of him and make him make him sign it. He seems to only veto things whenever it is, whenever it's only something that goes against his personal stance. So, for example, whenever we wanted him to pull out from Yemen, there was a very pointed bill there that he vetoed that. There was another one on his emergency declarations. I think it was like 2 or 3 of those for the emergency declarations. His vetoes aren't really necessarily for legislation that's coming through. It's more of, well, I want to do things my way. So I think that he would sign in that way. But so this cutting of this funding to reinvest to the Black community, as here in Mother Jones, even this article that I'm reading from, even if it was $250 million, it would only be about $600 per person. So clearly they're having some issues where they're not cutting enough money, and the negative effects of cutting all that money from the police department, who knows where they're going to be collecting that from? I don't know. Probably more speeding tickets, probably more things that broken taillights. They're going to come up, bash that, take a taillight out, and charge you for it. I'm not certain if California has civil asset forfeiture, but you can expect if they do have civil asset forfeiture that the police are suddenly going to be checking everyone's car. There's a wafting of marijuanas coming from each vehicle, and so they're going to strip search each car and find any pennies, any nickels, any dimes in order to keep funding themselves, because starving the police department and when they've been bloated and large for so many years, it's just they're just gonna find their own ways of making this money through what is legal, not necessarily what is right. So we have such a wide variety of ways that people are trying to come at this. And I think that really what we can boil this down to is that government has no fucking clue. They have no clue whatsoever what they're doing. The idea that we're going to have legislation that protects people when they aggress upon others, and then also say, hey, let's be good people, let's care about each other, let's give everyone the equal opportunity, it just doesn't pass the sniff test for me. When we've seen that historically people of color, people in the minority communities are being disproportionately affected by the police state, by the war on drugs, by just stop and frisk and everything else, we're not necessarily going to see it better just by defunding those police officers. We're not going to see it better just by saying now everyone gets an equal opportunity. We've heard this for years on end. So I think that what we're struggling with now is the fact that government has no way of holding itself accountable, because they're always clearly, and as what we've seen historically, is that they're always clearly on the right. Every time the government has checked itself, the government comes out and says, we did no wrong. It's cool. So who's watching the Watchmen? And if it's not us, then who? And so I would encourage you guys all, get engaged. Let's get involved. Let's make some changes. Let's change some hearts. Let's change some minds. We gotta end a lot of these profits for policing. I know here in my state of South Carolina, civil asset forfeiture has run rampant. Between the years of 2014 and 2017, we had about $17 million being taken from the people. $17 million in 3 years. And along with that, because it's civil asset forfeiture, not criminal asset forfeiture, means that you don't have to be charged or even be found guilty of a crime. And in 19% of those, the person that had their assets taken, they were not charged, or they were not found guilty of a crime. In 20% of those cases, they weren't even alleged a crime. So we're looking at 39% of that $17 million worth of assets taken by the police here in South Carolina between the years of 2014 and 2017 being taken wrongfully without somebody being found guilty of a crime. And so I would encourage you guys all to check into your state, see if you guys have civil asset forfeiture, see how bad it is in your state, get involved, get engaged, find out what kind of communities are fighting against this. This is commonly being fought by any civil libertarian entity. This is fought by the NAACP. This is fought by, typically left-wing organizations are much more predominant on fighting against criminal justice reform, but criminal justice reform is something that is common sense in a lot of ways, and there is a lot of partisan talking points, but we can get through that. We can find out what's common sense and what works and what just simply is too far out there. But it's absolutely clear to me that with the situation that we're in this country right now, that our criminal justice system doesn't work for us. It doesn't make our community safer. It doesn't restore people who go through the system, right? If you've been incarcerated, our recidivism rate is well over 50%. So if you've been in the prison system one time, you kind of a lot of people build their community there. That becomes their quote unquote home. And then they get out and they're like, nah, this isn't working for me. They either recommit crimes, they commit, whether intentionally or unintentionally, through occupational licensing, through basically having a prison sentence being a lifelong sentence, because you have to put that on your resumes. You're incapable of getting a good job because because we have a punitive system rather than a system that works on rehabilitating people and to right the wrongs that are being committed. People aren't trusted when they come out. So we have this problem where people are incapable of getting out of the prison system and getting a good job, being able to provide for themselves, getting a good education, and just becoming independent of themselves, and then, you know, having their dignity restored to where they can be a productive member of society. Instead, what we have is people that come through the system and they just keep cycling through over and over and over again. The criminal justice system in this country is entirely broken. It has never been working, whether it's in the Democratic states or in the Republican states. One thing is clear is that it has not been working for us. Mandatory minimum sentencing happens. It's strong in Republican states. It's strong in the Democratic states. They first started off when their origination, they were only a couple years long because it was a minimum thing. Right? It was a bare minimum. And now what you have is mandatory minimum sentencing for a pound of marijuana, something like 50 years. Doesn't make sense. 50 years for owning a plant that you're probably going to consensually trade with another that's going to cause no harm. It's not worth 50 years. Our system is broken. We need to come together. We need to find a way to fix this. And I would encourage you guys all to find ways of getting involved, getting engaged, and let's make a difference. We can listen to Spike and Matt and myself. We can listen to all the podcasts that we want. We could become the all-knowing people of what's wrong with this system, and we can talk about it on over the keyboards. We could talk about it through a hot mic, such as what I'm doing right now. We could talk about it in so many different ways. But if we're not actually getting out there and activating people, getting petitions, signing stuff, going in and protesting, getting our voices heard to those who have authority over us, then we are just as complacent as any Republican. So we got to find a way to build out and make this be heard. But with that, I'm sorry for doing this for such a short episode, but I wanted just to come on here, give you guys 20-30 minutes of a discussion on what's been going on, my take on everything, and clearly there is a lot more going wrong in this country than going right, and I think that really, if I can use it from the campaign that Spike was formerly with, right, the system's a joke. And we got to be in on the joke, and we got to figure out a way to fix this joke, because there's too many lives that are being destroyed. We are not going to establish freedom by just sitting back and being idle and allowing it to go on. But with that, guys, I hope you guys all enjoy your week, enjoy your weekend. It is Friday, so don't drink and drive or ride with those who do. You have family and friends who care about you and love you deeply. They want to see you again back here safe for next week, for Tuesday, for Spike and Matt on the muddy waters of freedom as they continue to traverse those muddied waters. And with that, thank you everyone for coming in, tuning in, for joining, for sharing, for the support for year in and year out to Muddied Waters Media. Thank you for Matt and Spike for giving a platform for me to be able to come out, air my grievances, and to redress my grievances, really. But I hope you guys are all taking care of yourselves. I look forward to continuing to grow with you guys all. And let's get out there, let's get active, and let's make some changes. And with that, I hope you all have a great day. Take care.